All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Chuck McShane. I'm the Senior Vice President of Economic Research here at the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance. Today we have a group of leaders in the staffing and talent acquisition space. And given the changes in the economy in this space, we think that the staffing and talent space has a lot of insight, frontline insight into what's going on in our economy. So we're happy to have with us today Dave Holtzman from Search Solution Group and Eric Roberge from Genesis 10, two Charlotte region companies who are at the cutting edge of staffing and acquisition for our technology companies as well as companies throughout our target industries. So welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
So if we can start off by introducing yourselves a little bit and telling us a little bit about what each of your companies does. If we can start with Dave.
Absolutely. So I'm with Search Solution Group. We are a large local recruiting and headhunting firm here in Charlotte. We service mainly companies throughout HR, accounting and finance, IT technology, supply chain operations, and a few other fields. About a 60-person office here in Charlotte, a couple of satellite offices and employees elsewhere. Do about 50% of our business local, the rest nationwide.
Great. And Eric?
We're a large technology firm here in Charlotte. We have our headquarters are based in New York City. We predominantly support financial services industry, and we span from coast to coast. We do emerging talent programs, technical staffing, onshore domestic delivery model, and basically we strive in helping our clients find solutions to whatever their technology needs are.
Great. And it looks like Macon Albertson may have just joined us from Signature Consultants, Madison, Gunn. Is that you, Macon? Well, we'll continue on if Macon can join us later on. Getting into some of the content here, how are you seeing? Oh, looks like you're here. Where are you seeing the industries that you work with? How in general has this COVID crisis affected some of those industries?
I can jump in first. So it's really been all across the board, Chuck. A lot of it's dependent on the type of company or the type of clients and customers that customer services. So we've seen some clients that have had a uptick as far as needs across the board, whether it's technology related or engineering, operations, anything in that realm. But of course, we've had other clients that have had either hiring freezes or just a general backing off from any hiring at this point.
And Eric?
We're finding some are struggling. The financial industry seems to be maintaining, is what we're seeing. Where we have some clients in some other areas of the retail space. It seems to be struggling a little bit. We're coming across approved budgets that are now being reassessed. People are needing to go back to the table and justify the previously approved 2020 budget and kind of forecast for a post-COVID-19 2020, if you will. And the insurance industry seems to be stronger than usual. I have an opinion on that, but nothing concrete. But we're seeing an uptick over the past couple of months in the insurance side.
And the Charlotte region as a finance hub, finance center, how do you think that helps us stand out in terms of other regions of the country and withstand this crisis?
Charlotte, I think I think back to the housing boom. We were kind of the last ones to be hit. I almost feel like with the financial side, again, it's maintaining, but I think as the deeper we come into this, I'm seeing it take its toll a little bit the further we go in. I think we've actually seen a reduction in fall-offs in our area here in Charlotte specifically. And I'm thinking those are probably temporary at this point. I think companies are, they're aware of what's going on and trying to, I'm looking for the right word here, but sympathetic, I guess, to the situation. And so we're seeing that fall offs are actually pushing out a little bit. That's helping us locally in this market from, with finance.
Great. I want to bring Macon into the conversation. Macon Albertson works with Madison Gunn, which is a signature consultants company, an executive search and placement firm here in Charlotte. Thanks for joining us today, Macon.
Hey, thank you. Sorry for my tardiness.
Oh, no worries, no worries. The Zoom's having some issues here, but we were just talking about in general what you're seeing overall, kind of getting an overall glimpse at how you're seeing different industries that you work with here in the Charlotte region and both nationally, how they're reacting to the COVID crisis from a staffing perspective.
Yeah, Chuck, it's interesting times, right? I mean, we've all been through recessions and events in the past. This one's so unique. We've got customers that are really struggling, those customers that are foot traffic consumer driven type customers that are generally experiencing the largest hardships, whether it be the cruise lines, airlines, restaurants, any of those types of businesses are really challenged right now. Also, a lot of our retail customers, anybody who's dependent on person to person foot traffic is really in a pinch right now. We also have seen in the manufacturing sectors some significant challenges because of the workspace, the close-knit worker environments that they have. They've been impacted because they've had to basically pause operations, which is, creating revenue stream problems, right? And then on the flip side of that, and I know Eric just mentioned it, a little bit, our financial services customers have been holding up pretty well. Don't know how long-term that is. The PPP programs, the government loan programs for small businesses has created a flurry of activity that's kept them busy in some areas. I think the low interest rates have created a fairly significant increase in mortgage refinancing, but at the same time, we've actually this week for the first time seen some other data coming out of the mortgage businesses that's really bad because home sales are plummeting. Again, it's a foot traffic dependent type business, so new home mortgages aren't doing well at the same time. So it's a mixed bag, and I think all industries are challenged to look long term to say what's going to happen. Second quarter is going to be key. May, June, even for our business, we haven't seen a large fall off. We've seen some pause in activity, those types of things, but we also aren't seeing our customers overly busy, which is worrisome, right? It's just a very strange time, but it's kind of you're either in the feast bucket or the famine bucket right now, depending on what you do for a living to generate your revenue.
Right. And when we talk about the tech sector in Charlotte and it being so dependent on the financial sector, and looking forward, where do you think Charlotte plays into technologies that may influence life post-COVID, and how?
Yeah, so interesting. We're all becoming more technology dependent. I'm not the youngest guy anymore either, so working virtually and balancing all the personal technologies that we're taking advantage of now from a business perspective, it's amazing, right? How productive we're able to stay in our virtual environment. In fact, I don't know if I've ever worked harder in my life, and I blame technology for that, right? They make a lot of things possible. From a corporate technology standpoint, one of the things that you may find very interesting is, the COVID crisis is a global crisis, and we have lots of customers that are heavily dependent on outsourced IT functions overseas. And those functions have basically ceased because unlike the United States, countries like India, the average person doesn't have dependable internet at home. The average person that does have internet at home, it's not very secure internet access, right? So that we have a number of large customers that are facing dilemmas because they've had basically operations offshore cease, and they don't have any guidance of when that work could continue. So from a Charlotte perspective, we actually may see quite a bit of work come back onshore as a result of this, right? Because it's been very traumatic for these companies that can't process things. You know, the business process outsourcing is really where India makes a lot of their export, expertise, and that business is almost ceased because they're under the same environments, right? They can't come to work. They're generally in very crowded workspaces and so forth. So that's stopped, and they don't have the personal infrastructure that we have in the U.S. So I do think long term, medium term, we may see a lot of work come back onshore that was offshored, and a certain percentage of that never go back because it put, from a risk mitigation standpoint, customers can't afford to do that in the future.
That's fascinating. We've heard a lot about the potential for reshoring in the manufacturing space, but not so much in the tech space. I know, Dave, Eric, you work very closely with a lot of tech talent. Are you seeing that as well?
Yeah, we are. In fact, we've seen an uptick in interest. We have an onshore delivery model spread out throughout the United States, and we're actually seeing an uptick in interest in that just because, as mentioned before, the mobility that we have here that's not in India. And that's where we were talking earlier about the insurance industry, where we've seen an uptick. And my opinion is that they probably in some areas were relying heavily on offshore to support some of their business, and now they're pulling onshore, and that's the reason for the uptick in rec volume. But our other service line is seeing a huge rec increase in demand for that right now. I think that's in large part, yeah.
I agree with that, and I think that we'll see both short-term and long-term gains for Charlotte and U.S. in general as well.
We've actually, some of our clients too are talking about tech talent location strategy. So, for example, some of the clients may have a pocket of 300, team size of 300 in one location. They're actually looking at spreading that out, whether that's 2 or 3 locations, just to kind of not have that, everybody compiled in one area. So Charlotte might be able to benefit from that as well.
Great.
Exactly.
Any specific, we talk about tech talent, it can be very broad. I know there's a lot of different aspects of tech talent. Any specific areas where you see Charlotte playing Charlotte or Charlotte region playing a outsized role?
One area that we've seen and will continue to see is more of the technical, maybe higher end customer service, some more of the roles in that nature. A lot of the customer facing especially.
So we're sitting here on Zoom today, and I think I read a stat that Zoom had 10 million customers pre-COVID and had 300 million most recently. So technologies that enable connection or enable non-contact transactions may have a big growth potential in this future. And Charlotte's been a center for payments technology for quite a while. Do you see that continuing? Do you see any indication of that trend changing at all?
Yeah, it's interesting. We've got a couple retail customers, and again, it's very COVID specific, that are considering when they reopen moving away from cash transactions, even as an option in their locations, as the result of the germ transfer that happens in the exchange of money. We all know money is very inefficient anyway, right? I mean, from a business perspective, whether you're in a grocery business, restaurant, or whatever, you really don't like physical money. You'd rather have electronic payment. But it's just going to be another reason for electronic payments to advance, as companies literally consider, why do we even take money? It's one less interaction point from a transfer of germs between our people and customers. The other thing that's really skyrocketing, as we all know, is the online purchasing. But personally, I can relate to it. I've never ordered my groceries from a online delivery standpoint. You know, my wife and I'll probably never go to the grocery store again, to be honest with you. I mean, we get our groceries delivered twice a week now. We order them in the morning, they come, they do a good job picking them. I mean, I can't even imagine me wanting to waste 2 hours to go to the grocery store in the future. So, and that's all electronic payment, right? So that's going to continue to advance the payments business. So I do think that, you know, transfer of cash person to person is going to continue to decline, and this is going to advance some of those declines in a very quick fashion.
I think it's forced the hand of some companies too. Just personal observation going into, I bounce around where I shop sometimes. You mentioned grocery stores. We go to a Harris Teeter or a Publix, and for the longest time, I came back from Europe, a 2-week trip in Europe last year, and everything was tap pay, you know, mobile payment. And Publix for the longest time did not have that, but it seems now, I went in after the COVID thing has started, now they're, you know, advertising the tap pay. So it took something of this nature to get, you know, force that company's hand. I think you'll see that with more companies as we move forward.
Yep. And how does that change the makeup of talent that will be needed for those companies? I
think the demand, as we were talking a little bit earlier, I think the demand was there before. I think it's still there. It's going to increase. We're going to have to look at upskilling and maybe reskilling, you know, some of our employees that we have working in other areas of technology. They have to be open to that, of course, but I think it presents an opportunity for staffing firms to help their clients by doing that upskilling.
Great. And I know,
yeah, anytime you transition something from manual to an automated, you know, process, especially when it comes to a technology process, it has a talent component to it, right? Because all of a sudden, look, the one thing about manual processes is you don't need a lot of security, right? I mean, you know, that you need physical security, but you don't need technological security. And the one thing we know in the technology business is nobody's smarter than the criminals, right? They're always trying to, you know, get at data and personal information and that type of thing. So the more we transition to, you know, technological solutions for everyday components, the talent pool kind of doubles, because it takes somebody to build, maintain, and advance the actual application. But then you have to have another side of it, which ensures that the security is continually updated to make sure other people can't access that information. And so, you know, manual processes, you know, are expensive in their own right, but they actually require less, you know, manpower sometimes than technology solutions, because you have to constantly evolve or it becomes obsolete in this environment very fast. But the security components are just as robust, you know, so it's a 2-for-1 job, you know, really. And so that will really, you know, Charlotte is a very good technology hub, and the financial services companies lead that, bar none, right? I mean, what they do for a living by nature is very technological dependent and security dependent, and it's really driven. Look, it's helped us attract companies like Honeywell, which you know, is building a new building downtown and stuff, and it's what has attracted even Lowe's to move more towards downtown from Mooresville and in the old days North Wilkesboro, right? We're attracting a lot of corporations in our environment because the investment that the financial services companies made early on, that have resulted into a very robust technical talent workforce.
Right. I'm glad you mentioned Honeywell. I know, you know, the cybersecurity aspect of the Charlotte area has been strong for a while now. Honeywell obviously is a manufacturer bringing their headquarters here. We have a strong manufacturing sector too in our surrounding region. And I know, Dave, you work with a lot of manufacturers. As we see this move to social distancing, as we see this move to more automation, do you see manufacturers taking more advantage of technology and technology talent?
Absolutely. This has been a big topic of conversation for, I'd say, the last several years. And we've seen quite a few local manufacturing companies really adopt technology into the manufacturing sector. And those that have been maybe lagging a little bit behind, as we've mentioned here earlier, maybe force their hand a little bit to move that up. so to speak, and really embrace that technology, which will in turn drive some more of those technology type positions into the manufacturing sector.
Great. So moving sort of to the employee side of this equation, I know a lot of people are 26 million unemployment claims in the last 5 weeks. So there's a lot of people suffering out there, a lot of people looking for work now. Have you seen anything surprising about people moving industry to industry, or any changes in how people are positioning themselves for opportunities that are out there now?
The interesting thing about our employment situation right now is, unlike 2009 and 8, which was what I would call fairly evenly distributed unemployment, we've got 26 million people in a very narrow segment of the workforce that are unemployed. And for not meant to be seen as a negative, but it's also in some respect, the least skilled people, right? So their skills don't translate very well to other industries, meaning technical skills, not skills in general. So if you think about people that work in hospitalities, restaurants, airlines, those people have very specific skills for what they do, and they don't easily translate into other professions. And so it's a unique challenge that, so we haven't seen a lot of mobility, to answer your question directly. We haven't seen, except for some of these business processing opportunities that have come back on shore that don't need the most technically skilled people to begin with. Some of these companies were doing a lot of basic processing of data offshore, and we can, utilize those workers in that space, but they don't tend to like that work, right? Because they go from being very customer facing to sit behind a desk doing data entry or what have you. But, the uniqueness in this environment is, it's a large volume of people, an unbelievably large volume of people, by the way. I think during the Great Recession, we only lost 9 million jobs, and we're already at 26 million over the course of 4 weeks in a very narrow segment. And, it's something we're going to have to keep our eyes on, because I don't know how you get that segment of the population into a position to be able to earn a wage anytime soon, because their skills just aren't very transferable without some type of opening of the system, which even if we open the system based on whatever the requirements come out, it still won't have the same volume associated with it, right? So it's a matter of how many, and then what, to Eric's point, are the things we can do to help allow them over a shorter time frame to acquire some new skills, so that they have a fighting chance of getting back to life at normal, or some set of normalcy.
So do you see this opening up opportunities to think more creatively about how we reskill workers and work through more non-traditional routes of getting people skilled to do the jobs that are available?
Yeah, I think that, over the years we've seen, I've been doing this long enough. Unfortunately, I'm not the oldest guy, but I've been doing it long enough that I remember, when I was selling technology services in the early 90s, almost all of your technology people came out of the shop floor, right? The first computer at every company ended up being in a production environment, right? And it was really to communicate with corporate and or the business side. And so we've proven as a country that, in short order, we can take a lot of people with X skill set and give them Y if the desire's there, right? And what we need to do is rally as a community, as a country, and as businesses to have the desire to take people who are in these very retail-driven jobs and give them an honest opportunity to retool their skills and maybe become involved in technology, become involved in maybe some more of the technical trades even, who become involved in professional skills that are, skill dependent, finance and accounting, application maintenance, help desk, network engineering, whatever it be, construction. I do know that, they're talking about an infrastructure package. That seems to be the way out of every crisis our country has over the last couple hundred years. So, but there has to be the desire. If there's the desire, people are smart, right? We all know that. Not everybody has had the same path, but everybody is kind of born with the equal opportunity for intelligence. And so I think, people are very smart, and if we rally behind them, we can retool as many of those that are willing to be retooled.
I want to give Dave and Eric a chance to respond to that, and then maybe wrap up with any final thoughts you have looking forward as we move into this unprecedented time.
It's hard coming off that. That was really well said, to be honest. I'm not sure I can really add anything of value, based on that feedback. But I do think that there's, it's not just it's the emerging talent as well, right? Our people that are just graduating from college that are trying to get into the tech space. It's investing in that population as well. I understand there's a lot of people that are out of work. There's a lot of people that were just entering or just on the cusp of entering that workforce that I think we don't want to turn a blind eye to either. But again, coming off that coattails of that's hard. So well said.
Thanks.
Agree with that, Eric, and making good points. One thing to add would be this is a good time for both companies to do more to invest in their employees to ensure that they have some extra skills that could be useful during this time. And then from a personal candidate perspective of maybe taking some more initiative in free time or just looking to get some certifications or branch out your skills in that. And we've now seen that something unprecedented can happen and flip everything upside down. So it might be good to have another option to fall back on, so to speak.
Always good to have plans and alternate plans as well. Well, I want to thank all three of you for taking your time to talk with us today. That's Dave Holtzman from Search Solution Group, Eric Roberge from Genesis 10, and Macon Albertson from Madison Gunn, a signature consultants company. Thanks, everybody, and stay well.
Thanks, Chuck.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck.